welcome to another Loom Press podcast. Today, I'm delighted to announce that we have with us Mike Garry, the Mancunian master of words and spoken word poetry. Mike, welcome to the podcast.
An honour to share space with you, man.
Absolutely. I suppose we just kind of maybe find out who Mike Garry is for people that maybe aren't aware of who you are. Where did it start for Mike Garry? Because we know that you were a librarian for a long time. I don't believe you're not a librarian anymore.
Librarians are like alcoholics. Once you're a librarian, you're a librarian for the rest of your life, man.
Yeah,
There's
I
no
suppose
way out.
I can see the books in the background anyway. So you're kitted out. So
Yeah. I always saw librarianship as a calling as opposed to a choice.
yeah. My
That's
housemate actually, he's a librarian as well. So
who's that?
my housemate,
Oh, right.
yeah,
I
he's a
bet he's
Tipperary man.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like librarians. I like people who work in libraries. They're interested in shit, so it makes them interesting people.
mm,
Yeah, I worked in libraries for 13 years, and it was the first job I've ever had in my life and the only job I've ever had in my life. Don't get me wrong, I worked on building sites and roads and all sorts of jobs, factories. I've done all sorts of jobs in my life, but I always it was always during some form of education that I was doing, so I knew it was always a temporary thing.
yeah,
So, but when I worked in libraries, it's the only job I've ever had, and I did my professional qualification there. So I did a degree in information and communications, and that was basically librarianship. And I worked in the library at the same time. And Manchester City Council were kind enough to pay for me to do the course and give me loads of time off to work around it because they knew what they get back from things like that. So.
very good.
So yeah, I did that, and I set up a lot of homework centres in Manchester, with focus on the fact that most grown-up people dislike young people on the whole, have some sort of weird jealousy. Um, so I set up homework centres to take the young people away, and ultimately to get the young people to read, because I know the power of reading and the importance of it, especially for a working class kid. And most of the places that I set up these homework centres were immigrant areas as well.
Very good.
So there's a lot of Ghana, Indian, Jewish, yeah, all sorts. The cross section of Manchester population, West Indian, a lot of African kids, a lot of Somalian kids, who, like me, second generation, foreigners, for want of a better word. So there was a lot of empathy going on there. But I got into words dead early because I realised I grew up in a house with six of us in, and in Moss Side in Manchester. It was just a ghetto, really,
Yeah,
where the poor Irish immigrants and the Afro-Caribbeans. That's why the Irish and the Afro-Caribbeans have always got on so well, because they're usually in the ghetto together.
yeah,
So I grew up in that area, basically, that kind of area. Went to a terrible, terrible school. Um, but there was always language around our house, and there was always music around our house, and there was always stories around our house, and there was six kids there growing up together and stuff, and a large extended family. So language was all around, and language was a key thing. And um, growing up in Manchester, the bands were really influential with it as well, make you focus on language even more. I always enjoyed the lyrics, and it's pretty much at punk when punk was happening. Do you know
yeah,
what I mean? I was
yeah,
12 years old and mesmerized by it. And because I was a poor working class kid and couldn't afford the other clothes the other kids could afford, I became a punk overnight, didn't I? Because I looked like a punk and I acted like a punk. Uh, um, but the focus on it was, yeah, I talk about a teacher a lot who was quite inspirational for me, more than inspirational. She was empowering
Mm.
because she really focused on every individual kid in that classroom and gave them everything and made them feel valid and secure and safe. And the big focus was always on reading and storytelling.
Mm.
Uh, so yeah, and also just your basic survival
Yeah.
as a young person depends on a number of factors. One, whether you're hard and you can fight, because in this horrible machismo society in which we're growing up in, men from a very young age are forced to be aggressive.
Mm.
I don't buy that shit. It's in the DNA. I just don't. And they're forced to be aggressive, and even those who don't want to be have to be it.
Yeah.
Um, and it's usually violence. And I don't particularly like getting punched or having to punch people. It's not an enjoyable thing.
No.
And I learned pretty quick that your language and your voice can be as powerful as any punch or any slap. And I justify it by saying, think of the worst thing that anyone's ever said to you.
Mm.
Would you have swapped it for a punch?
Yeah.
And yeah, of course you would have, because a punch happens and it's so I realised it was defence mechanism. My voice, my language, the way I speak was a defence mechanism to look after myself and to stick up for my friends and to
Mm.
and then I realised it impressed girls and it impressed
Yeah.
people generally.
Yeah.
People were impressed generally if you could talk, if you could express yourself, if you could say interesting things.
Yeah. Were you
Oh,
sorry,
so
no, sorry, no, I was just gonna ask, were you shy back then? Or were you always a performer maybe?
yeah, but I've always had an incredible shyness. I'm an incredibly shy person, and that's why I'm good with language because I have to put on an act, don't I? You know, what I mean, you
Mm.
have to put on a performance whereby your outward display of yourself isn't necessarily what you like.
Mm.
Um, I try to be myself as much as possible, but sometimes with nerves and things like that, it skews you off a little bit. But authenticity is the most difficult thing to attain, but it's the most important thing of what I do. Yeah, you get me, but you get me in a different light, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Music was always that important to me as well. Music was really important, especially in the period I was growing up with, especially in the household I was growing up. Both my parents had a record player and they would play their music on a regular basis. And it was usually the likes of Jim Reeves, Perry Como, Nat King Cole, and occasionally with the volume turned down, they'd put on the rebel songs and the Irish records and stuff like that, Dubliners and occasionally the show bands, Big Tom and the like. So it
Mm.
was always around us. And
Yeah.
then because I was second youngest, I had big brothers and sisters. So my big brother, Shay'd take me into his room and play me things like Stranglers and never mind the Bollocks and Buzzcocks and things like that. And Elton John as well. It wasn't just one
Mm.
kind of music, very varied musical platform he was sharing with me. And I was reading Gatefold album sleeves. I still maintain I genuinely learned to read through Gatefold album sleeves because I didn't give a shit about Tom and Peter and Jane or what. I didn't care about them people. I didn't care about Pat the dog. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's another thing about growing up in Manchester with Irish immigrant parents is the fact that you never feel at home and you don't like the representation of the middle class. They're the enemy in lots of ways. So as far
Mm.
as I was concerned, Peter and Jane were the enemy.
Yeah.
And I don't particularly want to read about Peter Jane in the posh house with the nice mum and dad who never get drunk and things, you know what I mean? And
Mm.
they go to things like cafes. I say it all the time. And the important thing to me about reading was discovery as a child. And I remember reading The Tiger Who Came to Tea and asking the teacher what a cafe was. Put my hand up and it's 1971. I'm 6. I come from an Irish immigrant household in an Irish ghetto community. There's 8 of us all in the family. How am I even going to know what a cafe means? I didn't even think you could eat outside your house. I didn't even know you could do that. Um, but it gives you aspiration. and that motivated me. And I think I'm pretty high level operating ADHD. So the whole idea of the music and the writing and the poetry and the art always entranced me in lots of ways, and took art gives you the opportunity not to be normal and justified. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Mm.
So your thoughts and your ideas and your inclinations and the things you love aren't based upon the natural lines of thought, but are mainly based upon metaphor and things. And that world kind of interested me a lot more.
Very good.
So that's how I got into words and stuff.
Yeah, because I was going to say, am I right in saying that you didn't sort of where you're at now with performance poetry and spoken word, you didn't get into that until, or at least at a sort of a at a big level until you were around in your mid 30s. Am I right in saying that?
I don't know what a big level means, but I never performed a poem live until I was about 32, 33.
Right.
I had
Yeah.
kids. I was bringing up kids. You know what I mean? You can't be jibbing around the poetry scene when you've got new babies and stuff. So
Yeah.
I left it till we were a bit older and started then basically. And started doing slams and things like that and winning them. And then I went to America. I spent a bit of time doing poetry in New York and around there and winning slams over there and realizing as an artist, you constant, especially as a young person, you constantly live in that fear of imposter syndrome. I still live with it now,
Mm.
whereby you just don't believe you are what you actually are. It's because of upbringing and the fact that society on the whole just tries to make young people feel shit about themselves, especially working class people.
Mm.
So. Yeah, the music was really important, um, and the fun that I gained from performance became important. I enjoyed the repetition of stuff. We used to record TV programs with a tape recorder next to the telly, and you'd hear my dad coming in going, "What's that cursed?" I'm like, "Dad, shh." And it was things like the young ones, and it was purely for language phrases or expressions or stuff like that. We did music as well, of course, top of the pops, but I was always quite obsessed with words and the way words sounded, and not just the meaning, but the whole anatomy of words. You know what I mean? The noise they make, the shape of letters. Do
Mm.
you know what I mean? The way letters look,
Yeah.
visual art element to it. Every letter is a beautiful sculpture.
Mm.
And just the whole concept of the ability to be able to process 26 different letters and 26 different shapes, and they're all put into a code that you can sort of like suss the code
Yeah.
in weeks. You know what I mean? You can really advance, and then they start adding apostrophes and all the grammatical tools, and you still understand it. You can still read through it and stuff. So all the elements of reading, I enjoy. I enjoy making books. Do you know what I mean? I enjoy. As little kids, we made books. You know what I mean? I enjoy that element of doing it. I find that fun. Yeah, it's fun. I enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
And it's never been my priority to make loads of money. My priority's always been to have fun. So
Mm.
if you put your fun at the front of everything,
Yeah.
you have a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. That's it. That's it, I guess. And I was going to ask about you have a very. I remember the first time I saw you was in Kilcock. I'd never heard of you before, but I saw you in Kilcock, and I was blown away. I remember you locked eyes with me in particular for 10 seconds, and I was like, you were halfway through one of your poems, or one of your pieces. But yeah, locked eyes with me, and it was mesmerizing. And you've got a very unique way. How did you craft your style? I'm very interested in because you've, as I said, very unique way. How did you craft that style? Was it just
I
through
find
practice
it's a
or?
really, really difficult question to answer. I find it a really difficult question to answer because if you'd have asked me this 10 years ago, I'd have said, what style? It's just me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's just me on a stage. But because I've been asked so lot for so long now, I've become the worst thing that ever happened was I became conscious of it. That I became conscious that I actually wasn't just being me. And there was something more going on that I wasn't even conscious of in myself. And I'm not sure I am now, to be quite honest. Um, have you crafted your style? One, I don't really know what my style is. I just try to be myself as much as I possibly can. I try and make it like I'm just talking to my mates.
Yeah.
That's what I try to convey. I try to convey a not coziness, that's not the right word. I try to convey a warmth whereby it could be whispered. What
Mm.
I'm saying could, yeah, do you know what? Go on, girls know all the words to songs by Shaka Khan and they dance and sing. It could be done like that.
Yeah.
And also, I massively value the importance of spirit and the ability to create that spirit. And because so many people during interviews and asking questions and things like that, I've spoke about my performance, I've become conscious of it and I've thought about it. And I think the most important thing is that I try to create a spirit. I try to create a feeling within the room. And I think that's done silently in lots of ways. And I think that's a lot done through body and intonation and movement and massively trusting in the audience that they're willing to come on the journey with you. Because I say it all the time, they're half the gig. The audience are half the gig. Because
Yeah.
that collective consciousness which is taking place in that room can create such a massive spirit when it comes together. And sometimes I know I've got every single person in that room simply because of that, simply because I can feel the spirit. I can feel something in the air. I can feel the room. It's a sixth sense almost, whereby you know they're on that journey with you.
Mm.
And loads of empathy takes place. Loads of empathy takes place. Loads of beaming of love takes place. I feel the love from them and I'm just radiating love outwards, you know what I mean, in loads of ways. And not just love, a spectrum of emotions. But yeah, it's about creating the spirit. And also I talk a lot about dead people and it's almost about metamorphosizing their spirit and drawing their spirit to the room. And I'm not saying it's a poetic seance in any way, but what I am saying is, and it's like loads of people come and talk to me afterwards and go, "You made me cry, man. You made me cry." And I say, "I bet there was some happy tears in there, though, weren't there?" And they're like, "Yeah, you're right. You're right." Because there are, though. Do you know what I mean? There is so much happiness in what I do. Don't get me wrong. There's loads of darkness, but there's loads of happiness as well as loads of touching base. So in terms of style, yeah, I've become conscious of it, but I try to be as unconscious as I possibly can.
Mm.
And I just try to create a spirit in the room, and I just try to create a feeling in the room. And when people come with me on that journey, we do a beautiful thing that's really difficult to describe. Um, but yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think I get you, and I actually really like the way you described that. Yeah, I think Patrick Kavanagh as well. He talked about that in one of his poems about we need to be sort of in an unconscious, not unconscious, but like not conscious of trying to create something. It'll come to us
yeah,
if the moment's right, that kind of way. So I
yeah.
think,
I just try to really be conscious of ego as well.
yeah,
I be really conscious of ego, you know what I mean? And not allowing that to take over because the most important thing is the poetry, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Um,
Do you ever feel competitive in the sphere of spoken word poetry, or
Never always.
never always? So yes
I
and
could
no.
sit here and be a proper fucking knob and go, no, I walk hand in hand with these people as brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
But we don't. And we're the worst, most competitive people in the world as well with it, but we try and be all cool, but we're keeping our eyes out on what's happening and who's doing what. And if he's doing something and you're getting a little jealous because he's what, and then I ground myself.
Mm.
I ground myself with Mike, get your shit together, man. It ain't about that.
Yeah.
And Lem was really good. Lem was really good with that. He said hemispheres, that's what he says. We're all planets in the hemisphere.
Yeah.
And some of us are moving at different times and different spaces and different. And
Yeah.
it was just a good way of doing it. I don't give a shit, really. But then I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. That's it. That's a great way of putting it. It reminds me of I think someone before said was talking about James Joyce and sort of how he sort of overtook the sort of literary scene, particularly in Ireland, maybe. But it was saying that and that he cast a shadow over everyone else, and that every other writer was seen as nearly inferior to him. This is generally speaking, but I think they were saying, well, that might be true, but look in the shadows. There's madness in the shadows, and I think everyone has something to contribute. I think
Of
that's
course, man. You know what I mean? I can sit there and say that jokingly. And sometimes I will honestly feel that, you know what I mean? But when you ground yourself and you recognize that no one's bigger than you,
yeah,
you know what I mean? No one's bigger than you. And also, there's also something about seeing seeing people who you love through their poetry climb the ranks
mm, yeah,
and become successful and make a living out of it. You almost feel part of it,
mm,
especially if they're sound people.
yeah,
Especially if there's loads of poets I've come across along the way who I've spent time with, who I've socialised with, and blah blah blah, who've climbed those scales and overtook me by a million miles. You know what I mean? I'm chuffed for them,
mm,
the sound ones. I hate the knobheads who don't deserve it, but
yeah,
the sound ones.
happy, yeah,
But at the same time, again, when I ground myself, do you know what? I don't really care because I'm quite happy with what I do and the way I live my life and the way I operate my poetry. It's
mm,
a very niche world and I do a very niche thing, you know what I mean? And if it was populism I was looking for, you know what I mean? I wouldn't choose to be a librarian poet who works with a classical string quartet.
mm,
So I don't even really want to be popular, to be
mm,
honest. I want the specky kid with freckles in the corner to like me. That's who I want to like me. Do you know what
mm,
I mean? I don't want everyone to laugh at my jokes. If I crack a joke on stage, I want one person to laugh at my joke. I don't want to be popular. The popularity of it all doesn't really interest me. The money does.
mm,
And to know that getting my word out there
yeah,
is important because that's the most important thing in it, to know that people are reading your words.
yeah.
It goes beyond money, you know what I mean? It goes beyond money.
I had to.
And
Oh yeah, you mentioned the string quartet, and I did want to. I want to ask you about it as well. They really do elevate your words. And they really add that a new dimension when you're listening to them. How did you meet them? Where did you come across them? The string quartet. Did you just recruit them like?
so I recorded a poem about Tony Wilson, which got to #1 in the UK charts.
Wow.
And I worked with a guy called Joe Dodell, and Joe introduced me to them because he'd worked with them before. And I just said to him, listen, do you fancy doing some more music? Do you fancy? And then the journey began. And it was a journey because they were young students coming out of college, they'd never composed anything in their lives, and they're all used to just reading music. And I said, right, let's make music. And
Make
well,
it.
where do we start?
Yeah.
And it was literally a process of working through different methods to try and make music. At first, Joe Dell was writing music for us, and then we just thought, let's do our own, and we just tried different practices and different methods doing it and different ways of playing. Central to it all was always fun and enjoyment and loving it. every moment of doing it. I never want things to feel like a job. I've always tried to avoid any form of work, honest, decent work.
Very good. It's
Um,
yeah,
so I try not to make it feel like a job, and I try to make it, and it is all of it's a sheer joy. Um, and I'm really lucky in that I'm able to do it. One sec, I'll get in the face. What, you all right? I'm cool. Carry on. Um, so what was I talking about? Yeah, I'm very lucky to be able to do it, and I live in in a very niche world, and the string quartet do that, continue that niche world almost, because again, that's unique. What we do is unique. I've never heard anyone do anything like what we do.
yeah.
Um,
No,
if if populism was the priority, I'd be singing Agadoo, you know what I mean, or party songs, or
mm,
whatever, or Robbie Savage tribute bands, or something to that effect, you know. But
yeah,
no, I
no.
choose to do the things I enjoy doing, and I'm very lucky that I'm able to do that.
Yeah, you are. I suppose it is a bit of a dream, you know. And it's especially like creating things and like you said, though, bringing those students and creating stuff, creating new music with them. And I actually as well that's what something I wanted to ask. Would you like recite, say, or would you perform a poem, and would they listen to how you do it and then make create the music around, or do you hear the music
That's
first and
one way.
then one way? Yeah,
That's one way to do it. But another way, and the most effective way, well, another way, and it's happened. They'll hear one of them will hear me do a poem, or find me doing a poem online, and from that poem they'll go, "Listen, I've heard this poem. I want to do this with this poem," and they'll individually go off. Or I'll read a poem, and one of them will go, "Yeah, I'll have that. I'll have that one." Or on the rare occasion, I'll make them jam out a poem as well, whereby I go, "Here's the words. I'll see you in 3 hours. Work it out between you. So don't want you working on your own. I want you to work as a team, as a group." So yeah, that's the general practice of how it works.
unreal. Yeah, it's really cool. I've become obsessed with string quartets the last while on uh, on
Yeah,
Instagram
they're
and
upset.
YouTube.
Do you know what? Again, it's weird. Class is a weird thing. As a kid growing up, I just thought classical music was just for knobs and posh people, and then you realise, well, you don't. It's taken me a very long time to realise that, isn't it? And in lots of ways, it's a working class gig.
Yeah,
Their instruments are just the same as those tradesmen, a plumber, a plasterer, or whatever. They're probably a bit more expensive actually, because the average cello's decent one's 50 to 60 grand.
jeez.
So they're carrying work around the world and plying their trade around the world in the same way as my father did, or do you know what I mean? In the same
Yeah,
way as all our lives, people have had to travel for work, and they're not posh. You know what I mean? They went to posh schools and that, but they're not posh kids. You know what I mean? They grew up in similar, not too dissimilar backgrounds to what I grew up in. So you have this whole misconception about certain things in life, and mine was one of mine was with classical music.
mm,
I've discovered loads working with these guys, working with these people, and just seeing what. And again, like you just said, you become a bit obsessed with string quartets. So you start listening to loads of string quartets, and then you
yeah,
start discovering stuff you really like. Um, yeah, and it opens new doors. It's like a new chapter in a book in lots of ways.
yeah. Absolutely. We only have about 10 minutes left. So there's two things I'd like to ask. So one of them is, would you by any chance be able to perform a short piece, maybe, or well, as I said, we have 10 minutes, so maybe is this the? I don't know if this is the zone for you, but if you like,
Nah, cool. I can do something, but ask me another question so that when I'm answering that question, I can have a think about what I should do.
perfect. Yeah, yeah. No, I just
That all
wanted to ask
right?
you. The other thing I wanted to ask was, how did you meet John Cooper Clarke, or how did it become that you, because you supported him a lot over the years, and how did
Yeah,
that
15
relationship begin?
years. 15 years.
Yeah,
John was one of a few people who really early on made me realize, hold on, people like me do can do poetry. people like me can write poetry, because in lots of ways you think it's beyond
The grasp.
you think it's beyond your ability in lots of ways, you know what I mean? And you think the stuff you're writing about is rubbish, and then you realise it's not. It's important. What you're writing about is important. And I saw John pretty early on one of Tony Wilson's programs, So It Goes, or something like that. Or probably Old Grey Whistle Test or something like that. And I saw Linton Kwesi Johnson really early on. I loved them both. I adored them both. And so I followed Johnny all my life. In lots of ways, he's my hero, which is stupid to say now because we're so close. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Say he's my hero. He's not my hero now. Obviously, he's my mate. But when I
yeah,
step outside that mate thing, he was dead important. You know what I mean? He was really important because I'd never seen no one do that before. And he lived in Salford, just down the road.
yeah.
So I went to see him live lots of times, and the first time I ever spoke to him, he was doing a festival in Plattfields Park, which is across the road from my house. So I had a copy of the book in my hand because I'd just been reading it at the festival, and I walked up to him with the book. My kids were with me as well at the same time, and I went, "Hi, John, my name's Garry. This is my book. Will you take my book?" And he goes, "I've got it, Mike." And I was,
No way.
nice one. He goes, "Yeah, I've got it, Mike. It's brilliant." Um, and then a few years later, I got a phone call from a mate, Kirsch, who lives in Broadbottom, where John Cooper Clark's manager lives, and He just met John Cooper Clark's manager. Johnny had a gig in Sheffield that night, and he didn't have any support. So
Oh,
Kirsch goes, "What about my Garry?" And Phil goes, "Great idea. Have you got his number?"
wow.
And he goes, "I'll call him now." So Kirsch called me. He goes, "Are you free tonight?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Blah, blah, blah, blah." So I went home and spoke to Johnny in Sheffield. Finished the gig, and Jones, who phones me and goes, "Can you do St. Helens on Saturday?" And it was United versus Barcelona in the European Cup final. And I was like, "Will there be a tally there?" He goes, "I'll guarantee you there's a tally there. There'll be a tally there for you." So I said, "Yeah, I'll do it."
Wow.
So and then it's just gone on from there. Really went to Jazz Cafe after that, and you
Yeah,
know what? It, a lot of it's a blur. A lot of
yeah.
it's a blur. But I'm writing a book about it, so I'm starting to put things together at the moment. So yeah, it's been an honour. We've got another tour coming up in the next week. We start next week. Yeah, I love the man. He's
Very
one of
good.
my he's one of my closest friends. I've spent time with him more than I've spent time with my wife in the last couple of years. Quite honestly, you know what I mean? We spent 5 weeks in America for the last 5 years. You know what I mean? We've been away for long periods of time,
Mhm.
and you become very close with
Yeah.
people and
He's
families and stuff. I mean, he phoned me yesterday and he goes, "Clark here. I am Greta. Clark here. Now important, just buzzing you. Speak soon." Do you know what I mean? So we're mates,
yeah,
but we work together, which
very
is
good.
really lucky. Really
He's
lucky.
he's the exception to the thing that people say is don't meet your hero. But in your case, you've been very fortunate, that your
Yeah.
hero has become your friend.
Right. So you want a poem?
Now we've four
Right.
4 minutes, okay, so we don't have too long. And I do want
Right.
to say goodbye to you as well
Cool.
before the meeting ends. So,
Cool.
um,
I wrote this poem for some friends of mine who did an adoption. They adopted some kids, and they went through the horrible adoption process. And it was about 2 years. And during that process, one of the parents died. So the mother of the mother died, and it was tragic, absolutely tragic. Um, but the weekend she died, she got a phone call saying, "Listen, we've got a kid here for you." So I wrote some about that. I haven't even got a name for it yet, to be honest, but I want to read this. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Sing shout his name up sleepy stairs, warm school clothes on the backs of chairs, pour hot milk onto warm toasted cornflakes. Place playtime snacks in book bags, count dinner money into brown envelopes, write his name on the front in capitals and in bold. Give goodbye kisses, long hard hugs, throw doorstep waves, fold black blankets on bed, puff punch pillows, smell pyjamas and race to work and smile as he swims in and out of your every dream and your every thought. Go on, pass it on. Pierce spiked candles through white icing, parcel presents, post left handwritten valentines, blow up balloons, hang stockings on high mantelpieces, stand in awe at biro scratched height charts on backs of doors, build snowmen, play snowballs, pass it on. The sidelines applauds in parks and fields, the cries, the cheers, the cries, the screams, the long walks and piggyback rides up high mountains through dark countrysides, the warm slumbered carrying from cars on tiptoes, the tucking in still fully clothed, the chance to dream, the hide and seek, the hours you'll stand and stare and weep at the simple beauty of a child in sleep. Pass it on. Give jobs and chores, send him on errands, finger count, pocket money, save for school trips, sponge blooded knees, twist splinters from palms and rub docking leaves on nettle stings, stroke black snails over warts and fall asleep during bedtime, story time, snoozing cinemas, stand barefoot on Lego, pass it on. The long drives, the holidays in caravans on Welsh coasts, the burning of toasts and roasts and fingertips on marshmallows and hot coal, make the most of every moment, be a shield from the cold wind and hard rain and the shade from the burning sun. But go on, pass it on.
Right, Gary, thank you very much.
Oh, you're really welcome. It's great to talk to you, man.
Yeah, it's great to finally talk with you in such depth as well, and I hope that our listeners today explore more of your work and find they can find you on Spotify as well, and you can check out Mike's website. He's got 3 books of poetry. This one here I've got Mancunian Meander. Um, and I'm sure as you said you're working on one as well, so we'll see one in the near future. But
Working on two. I'm
book
working
two.
on two. I've got a new collection, but I've also got all the poems that I've wrote for commissions because I'm good at commissions and I've wrote loads of commissions, but no one ever gets to see them. And there's
Yeah,
always a good story behind them, you know what I mean? And also, it's also important to know that writing's a trade and you've got to do jobs with it, you know what I mean? It's your job.
yeah,
And sometimes you can't sit there chasing butterflies with a long scarf on, you know what I mean? You've got to get your pen on paper.
yeah. I have to cut you off now, Mike, but because it's going to end
Thank you
any
so
second.
much. God
But anyway,
bless.
thank you
Take
very
care.
much.